Well, we had a great hunt this morning. He couldn't handle it when I quit calling. He just didn't know what happened to the hen that he was excited to meet, and she had disappeared, so he just came walking straight in.
Every time we go out and we turkey hunt, we always need to pay attention to what the birds do, and it's real important to know your property. We've been hunting this piece of property for 10 years, and we've I don't want to say we've patterned the birds, but when these birds typically roost in this one particular part of our property, that they like to go in one direction. They like to do this one certain thing, and when turkey hunting, you try to set up above the birds, and that's typically what you do. The birds, it's much easier to call a bird up a hill than down a hill, but in the case of this bird this morning, I did just the opposite, because I've learned over the years that when these birds like to come off the roost on days that it's windy or nasty, rainy, they typically like to go straight to the bottom. And I knew it was going to be windy today. I've paid attention over the years, and days just like today, when it's real, when the wind's starting to get up, and yesterday was a very windy day, that when these birds come off the roost, they don't want to go up top. They want to go straight to the bottom here. And that's not true everywhere, but it's just our birds here, and that's what I'm trying to hammer out to you, is that knowing your piece of property, knowing where your birds like to go, pay attention every time that you step out into the woods, will definitely make you a better turkey hunter.
Bustin' heads. Spring Thunder is brought to you by Realtree, Woodhaven Custom Calls, Huntera, Federal Premium Ammunition, Bog Pod, the National Wild Turkey Federation, and Cabela's.
Welcome back to Spring Thunder. Knowing the terrain on your property might be the most important thing to killing turkeys in the springtime. And on today's show, we're gonna actually go out to a piece of public land and put boots on the ground scouting it for the first time. And that's a big deal. Whenever you get permission to hunt somewhere, or you're planning on hunting some public land, many of you are going to be in this same situation. Going to an area that you're not familiar with, the first step is to get on the computer and look at maps like this. I've got my Huntera map pulled up here, and this is about a 3,000 acre piece of public land that I've never been to before. And as you can see, it's pretty monotonous terrain. A lot of you can relate to this. It's big timber, about a 1,000 acre chunk of just hardwoods with ridges, hills, and ditches running through the middle of it. And there will be turkeys in there, but with such a big area, you really need to concentrate your efforts on the spots that are going to afford you the best chance at a turkey. And those are going to be the areas with the most habitat diversity. And always remember that. Turkeys need to have food, water, cover, and good roosting locations. And on this map, for instance, you've got all this big hardwood timber that you're looking at here, rolling hills, real pretty place to turkey hunt, but most of the birds, I believe, are going to be down here in this back corner. This is about 1.5 miles from the road, it looks like, and 3 creeks actually come in down here. You can also tell by the topo lines on the Huntera map that that terrain falls down and gets pretty flat in that river bottom. Hens love to nest right up against creeks. It's the first place to green up in the spring. Turkeys obviously need water, but they've got these ridges adjacent to those creeks, which looks to be full of hardwoods, acorns and such. Probably be a pretty good spot for them to strut and roost. So I'm thinking that this little back corner is going to be the ticket. So now John and I are going to go out there. We're actually going to put boots on the ground and go to this spot and see if our theories prove true and there's turkeys there.
Great.
that rub you got? There's the all door up there.
I stuttered it. And we got to see where that creek comes in right there? We're going to go straight down to that creek.
We're probably pretty close to the highest point on this entire piece right now.
It's pitching down out of those trees right there, hitting this ridge, and scratching around when the sun gets up in the east, you know.
We got a creek right here. This stuff's a lot. It's probably about 50 yards up that way.
Yeah, it's just right there on the edge of the creek here. We need to walk it yet.
And then there's this really distinct line of more open river bottom to thick, nasty.
Yep. The reason why they love this so much, this is the spot on the map that we originally picked out, a while ago at the office. Yep. And that's because that creek is right behind us. What is it, 10, 15 feet wide?
Yeah, and it's got, quite a bit of water compared to the first one we got to.
Right, but as y'all can see behind John here, there's some pretty thick stuff down in this flat little creek bottom. And then over to our right is wide open kind of timber that butts right up against the creek. On the other side of this thick stuff is the big woods that we walked in on. All those big secondary ridges and points and stuff. And the trick with this location on the map is that all this diversity is in this one spot. Hens and their poults have what they need right here in all this thick stuff. Mm-hmm. They can nest in here right up against the water, and they can escape predators in it and that sort of thing. They've got the water in the creek where we're going to find plenty of tracks shortly, I'm sure. And then they can roost up on the edges of that big hardwood timber up there off of those points and stuff. They can walk out on those points and just pitch right out onto the limbs.
And what's also, kind of cool about this too is we talk a lot, and when we don't have that diverse terrain diversity in just river bottom units, how much turkeys like to roost along the edges of these creeks. So you kind of have
they love roosting over water.
Best of both worlds right here. But too, later in the season, like you were saying with the hens and their poults in here nesting, this would be a good spot to catch a tom midday.
Toms will they'll skirt the bottom of that hardwood ridge over there, where it's more open and where they can be seen, and they'll just work that edge all along the edge of this thick river bottom, strutting and gobbling, trying to pull hens out of this thick stuff as the spring progresses. It's hard to see now because it's, late winter, and a lot of this hasn't grown up yet, but you can already tell this green stuff is coming up underneath of these leaves because of the warm weather we've had. And that's what hens have to build eggs. They've got to have that fresh green protein. That's why they come to these areas first in the spring and feed on them and stay here throughout. So that's the biggest thing on the map. When we started scouting, it's so monotonous and it's hard to really pinpoint a specific area. And what people will do is they'll just walk through that whole thing calling back and forth. So, and it's easier to tell on some maps when you're looking to find habitat diversity, but right here in this spot, they have everything. They've got the thick cover for nesting, they've got the fresh green food source for early spring, hardwood ridges, acorns, roosting areas, creek for water, and then on either side of this, they actually have pasture, which is where they'll go to strut and display and stuff in the spring. So at this one little area, I don't know, how big is this, 50 acres?
Probably. Yeah.
This 50-acre chunk, per se, in the middle of 1,000 acres of big timber is the best place to find turkeys on this whole area. And that's how we have eliminated a lot of that scouting.
Eliminated a lot of walking, too,
right,
by using those maps.
Yep. And we've already marked several spots down through here where we found turkey sign. I'm sure we're going to come across a little bit more. But right now, when we mark those spots, we can come back in later this spring in the dark and be up on top of that ridge before the birds even start gobbling.
Yep.
And we're already a mile ahead of the competition on public land because most of the people are back at their trucks waiting to hear turkeys gobble. We've already established the areas where we believe birds are going to be. So we're going to be in here waiting for the birds to wake up, have the first crack at them, be able to move around in the dark and get set up in the right spot.
Yeah, that's probably one of the biggest things on public with the competition is
Yep.
just being that one step ahead. So, I mean, you don't really run into guys out here scouting for turkeys as much as, I mean, we've never really run into that, but when turkey season comes, you're running into people in the parking lot. So get up a little early, get to where you think those birds are, and you got a good head start on the competition. That can really pay off and beat them there.
Yeah, and the biggest thing with knowing the terrain and knowing where this creek is and having access to the mobile map the whole time is we can pop in the creek and move around on birds. If we haven't walked this area before, we're not going to know where all these different terrain and habitat features are. We're going to be able to look at a map and get an idea, but this is sort of how the whole process comes to fruition. You look at a map first, you pick the spots out, then you come out here, put boots on the ground, mark your points of interest, then you come in during turkey season, and the next step is figuring out how to hunt it properly. It's getting closer to turkey season now. A lot of you are starting to get your calls out, get them tuned up and ready to go. And today we're going to talk about calling to a roosted gobbler. A lot of folks have the tendency to set up on a bird when he's gobbling in the tree and call very aggressive to him. And what that'll do in many situations is keep that bird up on the limb waiting for you to go to him. Now what hens typically do when they wake up in the morning is a soft tree call. It sounds just like this. You can hear it's real soft, and I'm getting that sound by cupping my hand over the bottom of that slate call, and what that's doing is it's kind of muffling that sound a little bit. She's just waking up. I mean, same as you are in the morning, you're not real talkative, you know, your voice hasn't, it's still cracking a little bit, it's soft, you don't want to blow that turkey's hat off, especially when you're in tight to him on the roost. And what I'll do is I'll just call like that a couple of times until he answers me, then I'll set the call down and wait for him to fly down before I start my aggressive calling. But that's a great little call to practice, great call to use in the spring. The tree call, you can do it on a mouth call or a friction call like this Legend Series slate. And Woodhaven's actually got some specials going on now over at their website. If you buy their new Ninja Series 3-pack, you get a free t-shirt. So go over there, check that out. But that's going to wrap it up for this week's episode. If you're not already a member of the NWTF, please click on the link in the corner of our screen, go over their page and become one. But thanks for joining us. We'll see you next Monday for the next episode of Spring Thunder.